It's great to see everyone at this very full commission table. We shall begin by acknowledging, as we often do, that the City of Raleigh Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission is an all-volunteer commission appointed by our colleagues on council to extend our time, our energy, and expertise in advice and guidance with our colleagues both on staff, our colleagues on council, and of course our colleagues here in the community. With that, let us kick off a round of introductions. I'll start. I'm Nick Neptune, the chair of the commission. We'll proceed to my left.
Joe Caruso, vice chair and chair of the policy committee.
Chip Thrasher, just joined.
Alex Rittenberry, free agent.
Kari Barsness, policy committee.
Michael Dunn, policy committee.
Tammy Stern, planning committee.
William Smith, outreach.
Pierre Tong, planning committee.
Celeste Bravo Taylor, planning committee.
Colleagues.
Will Shoemaker, staff.
Barbara Godwin, staff.
Thank you. And last but not least, I believe we have a Parks Board liaison.
Beverly Clark from the Parks Recreation Greenway Advisory Board.
Thank you, Ms. Beverly Clark. With that, I hope that our colleagues on the commission have had a moment to review our minutes from our previous meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve our minutes from our previous meeting?
I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Barsness.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Do I hear a second? We have a second from Commissioner Bravo Taylor. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the approval of the minutes has passed. Thank you. We'll now proceed with public comment. And I will say I'm actually excited about this evening's public comment. We have a bit of a special treat. For our colleagues, both past and present on the commission. I'd like to invite Mr. J.P. Royer to please approach the podium. My friends, you have heard me advocate for community-driven initiatives that are making investments in the public realm with regard to active transportation. And it just so happens, not long ago, I had the privilege of sitting down with one local resident and very talented architect and designer and artist named J.P. Royer. And he shared with me a project that I suspect each and every single member of this commission, including our members of the public who might be watching from home, will enjoy hearing about tonight. Mr. Roy, would you please take a moment to introduce yourself and share for just a moment about this project?
Sure. Hey, everyone. J.P. Royer with Small School. This is a nonprofit I started a few years ago that is basically an organization that brings artists from all over the world to Raleigh to work with artists here, engage with communities, and we'll do things like lunch and learns, high school visits. Now we're getting into public art projects and community engagement through design build. And one of the projects that we're gearing up for is, I think, why Nick invited me, and that's a project at Lions Park. This is based on a previous type of work I've done in academia, where I'll have graduate students do work in the community for populations that that could use some help. And we've done things like gone into juvenile detention centers or food deserts or last stop high schools. The particular project this is based on was based on a geographically isolated section of Portland, Oregon, where we created the first phase of a bicycle skills park. And there's a lot of coordination with different community groups and civic organizations to make these things happen. The project at Lions Park involves working with the City of Raleigh's public art department and Commute Smart Raleigh, or Smart, I can't remember the name of it exactly, but you guys probably know what I'm talking about. And we're bringing in visiting artists from Portland, Oregon, both of whom have a very strong community orientation to their practice. And the reason that we work with artists on these kinds of projects is because artists see things differently, and in seeing things differently, they kind of let us experience what's already in front of us and value what we have that we sometimes walk by without noticing. It really, from our perspective, also works with bike projects, because when you ride a bike, you see the world differently. And in seeing the world differently, you kind of value it in ways that you might not otherwise. I mean, that's the premise for our thinking of doing bicycle-related work. What we're doing here, if you look at the plan, the image there, it's the project. All these projects evolve. There's several iterations because you have conversations and do kind of prototyping with different groups, and that feedback loop determines sort of what ultimately the project becomes, and there are several steps along the way. This step that we're looking at here has evolved since I shared it with Nick, and will primarily be focused on the comfort station that you can see in the map is under the trees, but it's one of those brick structures that used to serve as a concession stand and other storage needs. Hasn't been used much lately. If you've been to Lions Park, you know, often there are great things going on there in terms of the types of facilities that they have, from the BMX to the tennis courts, basketball, softball, et cetera. But in the comfort station area, it's adjacent to a little playground. There's you know, it's just hard to maintain that large tract of land, and so a little sense of neglect in the comfort station area. So what we're trying to do there is give it a little bit, a sense of care and repair through the work we do, and we're going to convert one of the blocks of the comfort station into a bike equipment repair facility, and do some work on the outside of the comfort station, including a kind of fun little loop for kids to ride on, to be sort of a beginner's step towards the BMX track on the other side of the building. We're working with Oaks and Spokes. I'm sure you guys know Jared on that. There had been an interest in a traffic garden, which I think would be great. It's complicated to get that much space. There is space, but the parking lot is often in demand when there are large events there, so there's reluctance to let go of parking lot space for a traffic garden. But I do want to say that we're very much in favor of trying to get traffic gardens to be a common thing in Raleigh. And this project hopefully can contribute towards movement in the direction of more traffic gardens by this first phase of a bike loop that kids would find fun and adjacent to bike education through the renovation of one of the comfort station modules. We'll also have a mural on the outside of the comfort station that will be done in celebration of National Bike Month coming up in May, and we plan to have an opening on Saturday, May 10th from 12 to 2 at Lions Park.
Thank you, Mr. Royer. Any question or comment from the commission? Well, hearing none, Mr. Royer, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I would like to ask one brief question of you. Is there a way in which the commission could be supportive of this effort at Lions Park, to your knowledge?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if anyone wants to show up for the opening on Saturday, May 10th, that would be great. And if you're specifically interested in participating, it's kind of interesting, the artists, when they come in to work with us, just because there's an interest in hearing from you, from the community, on the part of the artists, I think it's a constructive conversation, and it leads to ideas for engagement that wouldn't happen with other types of professionals. So if anyone is interested in participating in a conversation with the artists, these guys are really good, you could email me through smallschool.org, and I'll try to coordinate a meeting. It could be anything from participating in a morning session or just having coffee. I'm open to any of those ideas.
Thank you, Mr. Royer.
Thanks, Nick.
With that, we will now proceed, assuming we have no further public comment. Oh, it appears we do have a member of the public, in addition to Mr. Roy, who'd like to make a brief comment. If you'll please approach the podium and...
Yes, hello, commissioners. Mary Jo Gellenbeck, and I'm here to give an update on Whitaker Mill Roads, no parking in the bike lane signs. I did receive an email from city staff member, I forget his name, to say that they got the message from DOT to look into it. Since that message, there's been now 2 more no parking in the bike lane signs laying on the ground on Whitaker Mill Road. And I reported that with the C-Click Fix. So not only are that one stretch where the police officer did not see a no parking signs, that is still without no parking in bike lanes, but now on the other side, 2 of the signs are on the ground. And they haven't been put back in place. I really want to bring this forward again, because as I was reviewing and cleaning out, now that I am just a member of the general public, I started noting the no parking in the bike lane signs in 2023. And so this really, I think, brings to a head that we should look at policies for when we implement the infrastructure that goes in, that it is confirmed that it is completed before the project is ended. That project started as no parking in bike lane when it was launched, and it still doesn't have the appropriate signage to protect that infrastructure. And that's my comment.
Thank you, Ms. Gellenbeck.
Thanks.
We'll-
Last but not least, I am here to again invite you guys to join me after the meeting at Whiskey Kitchen right across the park for a celebratory drink. So I'm hoping you'll join me. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Gellenbeck. I think we have a question from Mr. Caruso.
I just have a question, clarifying question.
Yeah.
Whenever you said the signs are on the ground, do you mean like not installed or like run over and hit?
As
Like-
in, the whole post with the sign attached to it has been lifted out of the ground and is laying on the ground.
Okay.
And I'm assuming that maybe it was the Google Fiber crews might have removed it and just did not put it back in place.
Okay.
Wow. Thank you for the clarifying question, Mr. Caruso, and thank you again, Ms. Gellenbeck. Hearing no further question or comment and no further public comment from our community, Mr. Caruso?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess, make a comment. We received an email note from Oaks and Spokes today.
Yes.
It's not on the agenda, but
I do intend to bring that
Oh,
up
okay,
during
sure.
general board comment.
never mind then.
Thank you, Mr. Caruso.
We'll hold that thought.
I appreciate that energy. I love that. We will proceed with our regularly scheduled program with Ms. Barbara Godwin.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Barbara Godwin with Transportation, giving an exciting update tonight on our upcoming bike projects that our team is going to be managing this year. So we'll go through a little bit of background information, talk about projects from the previous year and what's coming up for construction, and then get into our 2025 list of projects that we're going to be managing, and then we'll have a little discussion. So just a quick background slide for you. As many of you are aware, our projects are derived from the 2016 Bike Raleigh Plan. We are about 1 year shy of the original intended completion date for projects that were prioritized in this plan. As you'll recall, it identified our long-term network, which really kind of serves as that vision for the city's bike network. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about in this update are all projects called out in this plan. So here's a list of our 2024 projects. We have 2 projects that are certainly moving to construction this summer into early fall. Those are the South State Street Cycle Track Project and the Watauga Street Neighborhood Bikeway Project. So we completed the design and engagement process for State Street and Watauga Street last year and wrapped up final design in December. Those projects are being bid out as we speak, and will go to construction very soon. We're very excited about those. As far as our Dandridge Drive Neighborhood Bikeway Project, we are finalizing some of the engagement work on that project. We had some additional conversations with the Biltmore Hills community after they noted several concerns regarding some other issues in their neighborhood regarding sidewalk gaps and traffic safety. Had a very good conversation with them a couple of weeks ago and are waiting for some council direction on that project. But just the map on the right over here calls out our neighborhood bikeways in the kind of magenta purple color, and our separated cycle track is in the red. So you can see kind of where these are located. So upcoming projects that we are going to be designing and engaging on throughout 2025. So we'll start with Industrial Drive, and I'm going to go through all of these in more detail. St. Mary Street and Donald Ross, all 3 of these are going to be project enhancements. So they are existing buffered bike lanes and an existing cycle track on Donald Ross Drive. We're going to be looking at adding some vertical separation to those corridors, as well as tying in some final connections to intersections. I've got St. Mary Street and Donald Ross Drive kind of highlighted in a yellow color there. On the left, they are potentially going to get pushed out a year pending some upcoming funding conversations to be had with City Council. So we will certainly provide an update on those streets when we know a little bit more. This is potentially as a result of some other projects being uplifted, specifically Brookside Drive. So that will be followed up on after the council meeting tomorrow when we'll have more direction. We are additionally moving forward with a project on Quail Hollow Drive and Hadley Road. And again, I'll get into more detail on those, but just for reference, the map over here on the right calls out the red as Quail Hollow Drive. That will be a separated facility. The orange is our a few of our existing bike facilities where we'll be adding the enhancements. And then Hadley Road to the south is called out in that purple color for neighborhood bikeways. So Hadley Drive, this is a pretty straightforward project. Project boundaries are between Crosslink Road and Callaway Drive. We are coordinating with the Neighborhood Traffic Management Program as there is an active traffic calming project on this corridor. We will be working with that project to incorporate sharrows and wayfinding to complete this section as a neighborhood bikeway. It ties into some of the existing facilities that are happening adjacent, potentially on Dandridge Drive, which connects to the South State Street Cycle Track Project and to some neighborhood bikeways north of that, as well as some existing facilities on Crosslink Road. So it really ties in a few missing links in that community. So construction for this project is slated for 2026. So getting into some of our project enhancements, Industrial Drive is really going to kick off the list of enhancements that we're doing this year. So we're going to be piloting some new curb stop materials in the existing buffer on Industrial Drive, and we're focusing on the section between Six Forks Road to the north of Six Forks up through Front Street. So you can see on the slide here an image that kind of depicts the type of product that we're going to be testing out. And really, we're going to monitor it over several months and figure out how this works, what the user experience is like, both for cyclists and drivers on the corridor and pedestrians, and take our lessons learned from this installation and use it to inform how we incorporate this into other projects or whether we need to pivot to a new material. So enhancements to St. Mary's Street. Again, we're really going to use Industrial Drive to inform the product type that we will use to go in the buffer on St. Mary's Street. This was resurfaced in 2023, so we're going into that phased approach where we're striping and then coming back later and adding the vertical separation. We're also going to be completing the final connection between where the bike lanes currently taper off, just north of Nichols Drive, up to the Wade Avenue intersection. So starting the design work on that. Again, just to caveat, the construction money may be 2 years out instead of 1 year. And similar scope for Donald Ross. So again, taking any lessons learned from our curb stop pilot and applying them to how we further the design on Donald Ross. We're also going to be tying in a multi-use path connection to the northern section to connect into New Bern Avenue and to the southern section that connects into Pool Road. Really focusing on where the cycle track on Donald Ross currently ends and transitioning that section behind the curb so that we can complete the facility to both Pool Road and New Bern Avenue intersections. And then just a quick recap on the different project schedules. So we are finalizing the design for Industrial Drive over the next couple of weeks. We've got a couple of cost estimates for this project and are pretty certain that we can move forward with construction between April and July. So very excited about that. That will give us a lot of good information as we move this type of installation to other corridors. St. Mary's Street and Donald Ross are a little more tentative in terms of their construction timeline. At best, this is the schedule that we are hoping to pursue. Should be able to tie in final design later this year for both St. Mary's and Donald Ross, with construction potentially the latter half of this year or into next summer. So again, we'll provide those updates as we have more information. So we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about brand new projects. So I'll lead off with the Quail Hollow cycle track. The scope of this project is between Hardemont Road and Millbrook Road. This is also a section of the Big Branch Greenway Connector project, which was a high priority trail in the 2022 Greenway Master Plan update. So we're working with our partners in Parks and Rec to help deliver this on-street segment of the Big Branch alignment. This was also a priority green street in the Midtown St. Albans small area plan. Just for point of reference, green streets are defined as adding trees and plants to streets to help absorb water, slow cars, and create protected places for people walking and biking. So again, working with partners in Parks and Recreation, as well as our colleagues in Stormwater to help implement this Greenway connector, as well as this complete green street. We will be working with them to deliver this project in a phased approach, with the cycle track really being the first phase. Just a little bit of background info on the Big Branch Connector project. As I mentioned, this was a high priority trail in the most recent Greenway Master Plan. There are 6 total segments that focus on connecting Crabtree Creek Trail to the south, up north to Cedar Hills Park, and up around Sandy Forks Road. So segments 1, 4, and 5 are currently in design. Segment 5 is the section that we in transportation are helping to support right now. Segments 2 and 3 do not currently have a determined schedule. Segment 2, I don't know if you all can see with the contrast, but it includes the Midtown Multimodal Bridge as part of that connection. So there has been some preliminary design work done on that segment, but we do not have a determined timeline for how that moves forward at this time. And then segment 3 will be built with the exchange development. So that timeline will be determined with the private developer on that parcel. Segment 6 to the north is currently undergoing a feasibility study. So more information to come on that, but no determined timeline for when that section will be built out. Just to add, sections 1 and 4 are anticipated to be constructed in 2027. So here we have a look at Quail Hollow's schedule for this calendar year. So between April and May, we're really continuing to work through that preliminary design and feasibility of the cycle track connection. We will initiate our first public touch point during this time frame and send mailers to all residents on the corridor and within 2 blocks of the corridor. And again, we'll have engagement materials for them to participate in and help provide feedback on the cycle track design. Later this year, June, August, we'll work to incorporate feedback from our first touch point and advance the design to about 60% complete. We will follow up early fall with a second touch point and update residents on any changes that were incorporated into the design. And then towards the end of the year, we'll work to finalize the designs and prepare the plans for construction. Looking at Quail Hollow from a broader standpoint, as we've talked about all of the different initiatives that are happening on this corridor, so 2025 will really focus on designing the cross-section for this street. So again, we are leading that work with our stormwater and Parks and Rec partners to design the two-way cycle track. We are also working very closely to align our design where we know that we can successfully incorporate green stormwater infrastructure into this street to really meet that Green Street priority. 2026, the cycle track will go to construction with our regular group of projects. We'll again work with our stormwater team to finalize the GSI design and complete installation that year. And then in 2027, Quail Hollow is planned to be resurfaced. So any design tweaks that need to be made at this time can be incorporated into the resurfacing plans. Part of why we want to do this phased approach is so that we can understand how the facility works before we add something more permanent. So again, an opportunity in 2027 to make some tweaks based on user experience. And then lastly, in 2028, we'll go back and add any hardscape vertical elements in the buffer of the cycle track. There's potential for GSI and other elements to be included, not just in the buffer, but other locations on the corridor. So any hardscape elements that need to be tweaked or added will be done at this time. And we'll also work to close all sidewalk gaps on the corridor. So this presentation was largely focused on the upcoming bike work plan, but just to call out all of the work going on with sidewalk projects. We do currently have 31 active sidewalk projects. I've listed a few here just for reference: Oxford Road, Plainview Street and Vale Street, Inglewood Lane, Norris Street. But there's many, many more that are available for viewing at raleighnc.gov/walkraleigh. If you scroll down to the sidewalk project viewer, you'll see a whole list of projects mapped out and their current status. So great tool to use to learn about specific projects. We also have over 9,500 linear feet of sidewalk construction happening this year. So definitely a lot of projects that are moving through the construction pipeline. That is my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Godwin. Any question or comment from the commission? I see two to my left, one to my right. We'll start to my left with well, I'll tell you what. Let's start with our newest commissioner, Commissioner Thrasher.
Hello, everybody. My question was just about the curb stops. Is there a significant cost difference between that and then other alternatives like bollards?
So the flexible bollards that we have in other locations are certainly cheaper, but they are a maintenance hazard because they need to be replaced very often. So it ends up costing probably quite a bit to keep them replaced. In terms of the curb stops themselves, we've looked at several different options. The ones that we showed are currently being used. This example is from DC. We found these to be the most cost-effective version of what we're trying to achieve right now. So,
And is there like do you have any like time frame about when the investment would return, just from the maintenance cost you said?
can you elaborate?
Like how long would it take for it to be worth it for the maintenance cost, since you have to replace bollards?
To be determined. We've never used these before, so we don't know exactly how they'll work.
Cool.
Well, and I do want to add one other thing that is pushing us to do this. Well, a couple things is one, this provides a little bit more deflection if a car hits it where a flexi post does not. Secondly, Raleigh is a very suburban in nature street, so with the flexi posts, that eliminates the ability for curbside trash pickup, for leaf collection. There are a number of things that the negative side of the productions or the vertical visualization that it causes. So with this, we're trying to find something that has an equal or better separation from vehicles and cycle lanes, but then does not prohibit or stop other needed services from accessing the curb. You know, postal service is another one. So this is a pilot on industrial to test all of those things out so that we can see if this is replicatable, if this is viable, and how we can expand.
So it seems like it might open up more places to be viable to have these?
Definitely.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
What material is that? Is that like a hard rubber, or is that concrete? What is that?
This particular material is like a hard rubber. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Thrasher. We're going to proceed to Mr. Tong.
For Quail Hollow Drive, is that behind the curb facility, or can you clarify about that?
Yes, so that will be an in-street cycle track that we're looking at with this installation.
Is there a reason that wasn't considered like Gorman Street?
I'm sorry.
Is there a reason that behind the curb wasn't considered for like Gorman Street?
Well, the street is actually eligible for traffic calming through the NTMP, so there's been a lot of conversations about how do we work this project into a way that can also kind of achieve the traffic calming need. So that's part of it, but additionally right-of-way, there's tons of space in street versus behind the curb. There would have to be some significant property evaluations incorporated into the scope. But essentially with the phased design that we're moving towards, this will have a significant separated element between the cycle track and the vehicular traffic. So it really will feel eventually similar to Gorman Street. It just won't be raised out of the street.
Ms. Bravo-Taylor?
For the sidewalk projects that are projected, and I might have missed if you all came to BPAC with an update for sidewalks, but are we working off of, where's the list for those sort of coming from or generated from? Is that like from our old petition list, or
It's
is that what we're
it's
still working
partly clearing out that petition backlog and some other capital sidewalk projects that were underway. Yes.
through? Okay. And have we had a sidewalk update recently about like where that program is and what the plan is for funding sidewalks?
The sidewalk petition program or the backlog of projects?
Just like the plan for how we're building sidewalks now that we don't have a petition program.
So that is essentially being covered through the active mobility plan.
Okay.
We will be bringing a more detailed update on the active mobility plan to the commission this summer, early spring, or excuse me, late spring, early summer.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
I'm wondering what the mechanism for getting across Millbrook is with the Quail Hollow. There's no stop on Millbrook Road between Six Forks and Falls of Neuse. How are the bikes and pedestrians going to get across it?
So the feasibility study for segment 6, which starts at Millbrook, is looking at that. I know a signalized intersection is being discussed, but the reports of that study haven't been finalized yet.
Thank you. Ms. Clark?
I have a mic over here, but I'm plenty loud.
Well, if you don't mind approaching, thank you.
So I was wondering why Industrial Drive was chosen as a pilot location for the curb stops, particularly because it's not a street that has thoroughfare kinds of traffic, so you just have pretty much slow-moving traffic. You don't have, as Mr. Shoemaker said, you don't have leaf collection on that street. You don't really have postal usage because there are no residences on Industrial Drive. And so it's not exactly the typical bike lane and doesn't face the kinds of typical challenges that a bike lane faces. So it seems to me like it's not a very indicative pilot that would really give us the kinds of information we would need.
So great question. It's funny you mentioned all those things because that's a big part of why we actually chose it. It doesn't have all of these active challenges that we have to work through, so it allows us kind of a test corridor to have all of our city services go out there and test how this material would work with their vehicles, such as our street maintenance team, our solid waste collection services, and then any other large vehicular services that need to be conducted. It allows that test without complicating some of the existing services and even preventing them from being able to occur. Additionally, we looked at several corridors, and we are intending to test this on other locations as well. We certainly want to test this on a more residential street, such as Whitaker Mill, a more mixed-use kind of street, such as Oberlin Road. This was just the one that we could easily deploy and kind of work backwards from there and figure out how to change this on other streets so that we know it will work better.
And I have one other question tied to the Big Branch Greenway, so thank you for your answer on that one. It does seem like it's sort of a soft hit there because it doesn't have any of those challenges. But on the Big Branch Greenway, I don't know whether you all are familiar with Trenton Road and how the Greenway was created to be pretty much like a cycle track, but with a raised curb all along it. And it seems like since what you're putting in on Quail Hollow is technically a greenway, it's better than Little John, where we don't have anything except a post telling us that it's a greenway. So this is more indicative of what the two things are supposed to be, but I hope that it will be something other than just a typical cycle track, that it really has some of the components of a more typical greenway, like Trenton Road does.
So we're certainly looking at how to make it more of an inviting and separated space, but for this first phase, it will be just a striped cycle track. That's how we're phasing our projects. And actually, let's go back to this slide because that might be helpful. Just looking at the different phases, we're initiating the striping work in 2025. The GSI installation will occur the following year. So that will give us a really good opportunity to do exactly what you are recommending and trying out some new things.
Thank you. Mr. Caruso.
Thank you. Yeah, so on this project, Quail Hollow is very residential and has an obscenely large number of driveways. Is, at least in the first phase, is the idea that this is just going to sort of be paint, like a painted buffer, and then like in 26 and 7, there's like more or less a streetscape program that sort of moves the curb or kind of builds hardscape, or how like, I'm trying to envision like what this is going to look like.
So it will be similar to the installation done on Donald Ross Drive, where we start by carving out the street with paint. Okay. And then we go back in and we add vertical separation to the buffer.
Okay. And so, I mean, just, I guess broadly speaking, the GSI facilities in this example would sort of be like bioswale and different things like in the buffer, or like what kind of treatments are we talking about here?
We are still evaluating the kinds of treatments. We actually met with Stormwater earlier today to start looking at some different options, but those different types of treatments that you mentioned, we're all evaluating where they would fit in best into the corridor, how it interacts with the cycle track, and how it achieves the overall GSI effort.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment or question?
You mentioned that these projects are kind of on the tail end of the 2016 bike plan as we head into the active transportation plan. Do you know off the top of your head a rough metric for like the % complete of those projects? Or, you know, even if you just had to ballpark it, like where do you think we stand?
There were 67 total priority projects. I think we're roughly over half.
Okay.
But I can provide a more detailed answer to that. As part of our active mobility plan too, we will address the remainder of the projects and where they fall into the next plan.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any further comment or question? Oh, one more from Mr. Caruso.
I just have a quick technical question. Is the Quail Hollow project, how is that funded? Is that funded through the Parks bond with the Greenway plan, or how is all this hardscape funded?
So the 2025 and 2026 piece that we as transportation are managing is coming out of the bike program budget. Stormwater is supporting the GSI installation, and we're working on how this ties in to segment 4 and segment 6. This is segment 5 is Quail Hollow, with Parks to kind of transition those intersections seamlessly into the remainder of the Big Branch project, which is being funded through the Parks bond.
Right, okay.
Thank you. Any further comment or question from the commission? Well, hearing none, many thanks to Ms. Godwin for this presentation this evening. We will now move forward with our reports. We'll kick off with a very brief chair's report. I did want to share with the commission that myself, along with former Commissioner Gellenbeck, we were able to attend Council's Transit and Transportation Committee meeting last month on the 27th. And I think that this commission will appreciate hearing a very brief update on that meeting, wherein council members heard updates from city staff on proposed solutions and interventions with regard to the Whitaker and Atlantic intersection at the Raleigh Ironworks, along with a number of dangerous intersections across the city that could benefit from interventions and improvements. And you know, just to keep this report brief, ultimately, our colleagues on council asked staff to come back to the full council with effectively budget notes and you know, a package as to how to proceed as quickly as possible. In other words, council said, we want to finance this, we want to move forward with this. So we should be seeing, now mind you, let me just take a breath and take a beat to acknowledge. Council members also asked staff, how long would this take if we were to start tomorrow or the next day, which I think was the 28th of February. And our colleagues on staff reported to council that, well, if we were to get funding the next day, we would still anticipate a period of about 12 to 18 months in terms of, build out and managing these improvements, especially when you look at the intersection there as you cross over from Loading Dock or, Whitaker across Atlantic to Raleigh Ironworks. There will be a need for some structural engineering, effectively, once you've made that cross. But either way, I think that this commission, after many months of being, informed on a regular basis by our colleagues in the community of, the cross traffic that we're seeing with cyclists and pedestrians, trying to make their way to what is certainly a terrific destination. I think that the commission will appreciate hearing that council is effectively trying to move this, move these improvements forward swiftly to improve the pedestrian crossing at grade. We're not going to wait for a bridge, to get from one entity to the next. So again, to keep this brief, our colleagues on council through the Transit and Transportation Committee are moving forward effectively with these improvements, not only to Whitaker and Atlantic, but to like a top 10, sort of dangerous intersections across our city. So I should express thanks and gratitude, I think, to our colleagues on council who really led this conversation. I believe it was council members Jane Harrison, Jonathan Lambert Melton. I believe that we had couple other colleagues there, because I think Megan Patton was out that particular day. Councilmember Jones, thank you, Councilmember Christina Jones, and was it Corey Branch? Corey Branch? Yeah, so thank you to our colleagues on council who really spearheaded this. We've got a question from Commissioner Barsness.
Yes, you mentioned, you mentioned the Whitaker and Atlantic, but then you said like the top 10 list. Do you have that list?
Well, we can get that list to you. I mean,
Yeah,
this
it'd
was
be
all recorded and, it's a
Yeah.
public meeting, but we can get the list to all of our colleagues on the commission of those top 10 dangerous intersections. Great question. With that, I will wrap up the chair's report. Up next, Planning Committee.
I don't have an update, but Celeste, was there anything that came up last month? Nope, no updates.
No major updates from Planning Committee. Thank you. Up next, Policy Committee.
Yeah, so we have the two outstanding items, and the next policy committee meeting is next week, and we need to round out the letter of support for the pedestrian text change, part of the clean transport follow-up that we heard about last month. I need to finish a few things, and then we're waiting back on the draft language as well. So hopefully next week we can knock that out.
Thank you. Up next, we have Outreach Committee. Mr. Thomas, I don't believe, is with us this evening. And in fact, I think the Outreach Committee was postponed, given some travel and some scheduling. So unless, Mr. Smith, you have anything to offer from Outreach? Okay. Well, then we'll proceed. We'll just say that no updates from Outreach. We'll now proceed with staff reports.
I guess one update, the projects that Ms. Godwin presented on today that she said were going to be constructed here shortly, that is grouped with 17 traffic calming projects that is currently being advertised with bidding April 2nd. So stay tuned. We're hoping to get successful bids and get construction here rolling in the next couple months.
Just highlights as to what's in the staff report memo. So there was a city council work session last week that reported on the 2017 transportation bond. I've included the link to that in the online version of the agenda materials. So definitely go back and watch that if you're interested. It's got some good updates in it. Mr. Neptune mentioned the Whitaker Mill at Atlantic Road Transportation and Transit Committee meeting. There's also some information in there about the follow-up and a link to that meeting in your online materials. And then lastly, an update on our active mobility plan, which we will bring back a report on in the coming months.
Thank you, both Mr. Shoemaker and Ms. Godwin. Ms. Parsons, did you hear that? There's a link in our materials to the, Transit and Transportation Committee meeting from the 27th.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
Okay. All right, with that, let us proceed to our general board comments. I'd like to kick us off just briefly here with a couple items. One, I'd like to create space for our newest commissioner, Commissioner Chip Thrasher, to introduce himself. I don't believe we have an additional new colleague joining us, I believe Miss Brittany Bryan. Brittany Bryan, I don't think she's here with us tonight, but we look forward to seeing her at her next, next full commission meeting. But we'll give her that opportunity next time. So if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Thrasher, just taking a moment, just a minute or two to introduce yourself and your interest in joining the commission.
Yeah, sure. My name is Chip. I am a student at NC State, graduating this December. I study engineering, computer science, but I have an interest in active transportation. I take the bus everywhere, and I bike and walk. So I'm interested in connecting with council and getting involved. I also think that I would like to work with outreach, if possible, to connect with our NC State and other universities in the area. We have a lot of Gen Z, myself included, and I think they, as everybody does, have a special way of communicating with the world, and I think that so we can try to bridge that gap. So, yeah, good to meet you all.
Well, as Mr. Thrasher knows from our onboarding and orientation earlier today, led by Ms. Godwin and joined by Mr. Shoemaker, I am containing my enthusiasm and my excitement for this colleague's interest in joining us on the Outreach Committee. I suspect you will hear more about this later this evening as we celebrate over beverages with Ms. Gellenbeck, just how excited I am personally as a chair of this commission to have Chip Thrasher joining us. So with that, let us proceed. I do have an item, and this is, I want to thank Commissioner Caruso for bringing this up earlier. Our colleagues with the Active Transportation Advocacy Group, Oaks and Spokes, they have sent a letter to our colleagues on council, and I think we were CC'd on this, a letter to council with regard to Brookside Drive. Apparently after nearly a couple years, it feels like, of public comment and engagement, engagement including members of this commission showing up on site at Brookside with members of the community and colleagues on council to listen. Our colleagues on council tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, during their afternoon council session, they will hear another proposal with regard to the Brookside Drive improvements. This is a proposal that was sought after I think as a means of compromise, given the variety of interests along the corridor. I think given the timeliness of this letter and as it's reached us at the commission table and in advance of getting to council tomorrow, if there's no objection from the commission, I'd like to just briefly kind of skim through this letter with the commission, and if there's, again, no further objection, I would like to ask for the commission's endorsement of the letter as as it's being sent off to our colleagues on council. And of course, we can modify our endorsement, as you know. But I think at first, like, just take a moment, all of like 2 minutes, to just share the letter. We can discuss it, and then go from there. Does that, any objection from the commission? Hearing none, we'll proceed quite quickly through this. Okay. Again, this is from our colleagues with the Active Transportation Organization and nonprofit Oaks and Spokes. Dear Raleigh City Council, I strongly urge the City Council to move forward with the approved plan adopted in September 2024 to install bike lanes along both the east and west sides of Brookside Drive between Glasscock and Frank Street. This project has received overwhelming public input and support and was approved by City Council in September of 2024. Now it is time that staff be allowed to implement these plans as intended and approved. The decision to prioritize bike lanes was made with safety as the foremost concern, particularly for children and families who attend Conn Elementary. After nearly 2 years of advocacy and discussion, it was determined that dedicated bike lanes offer the highest level of protection for those who walk, bike, and roll into the area. Now, while a few homeowners along the corridor have requested on-street parking, the number of residents both on Brookside and on neighboring streets who support bike lanes far exceeds those in opposition. We should trust the public, especially the parents of Conn Elementary students who have made it clear that removing the on-street parking in favor of safer transportation options is still the right choice. The convenience of adding parking for a few should not take precedence over the safety of an entire community. Brookside Drive should be designed for all who use it, especially since it is a school zone, and not just for parking. It's time to follow through on a plan that prioritizes safety, mobility, the well-being of this community. Appreciate staff and council for working toward a compromise by proposing a two-way cycle track on the east side of Brookside Drive while preserving on-street parking on the west side. This is a fair solution, but Oaks and Spokes has serious concerns about several key issues. Number one, in-road safety. The intersections at Glasscock Street and Frank Street require careful planning. Clear, visible markings must guide users across the road to the cycle track. These crossings introduce potential conflict points between drivers and active mobility users, creating unsafe conditions, especially for children. Number 2, sidewalk safety. It's been repeatedly noted that parked cars near Conn Elementary pose a risk to children walking to school. Children approaching from the west side of Brookside will still use the sidewalk, and parked vehicles taller than an elementary-aged child could create blind spots and hazards. Number 3, connectivity. As proposed, this cycle track would function as an isolated piece of infrastructure spanning less than a mile with no clear connections. If this compromise moves forward, staff must prioritize extending the network north toward Atlantic and beyond, and south toward Watauga and beyond. A disconnected path limits the impact of this investment. Last but not least, public trust. Decisions rooted in public input should move forward without being derailed by the concerns of a small minority. When council votes, that should mark the final step before implementation, not the beginning of another debate. Community advocates should push for meaningful improvements in their city and not spend their time ensuring that elected officials follow through on their commitments. Thank you for your time, your consideration. We look forward to your continued leadership in making Raleigh a safer, less car-dependent city. Sincerely, Jared Harbour, the Executive Director of Oaks and Spokes. Any question or comment from the Commission? Ms. Barsness.
I do have a quick question. I haven't followed that issue all too closely, but that road is actually pretty wide, which lends itself to cars driving faster. So I know that there are lots of places in Raleigh that have, as an additional safety precaution, speed bumps, speed humps, speed whatever you want to call them. I mean, I assume they work to slow down traffic, because they're still being used. I've heard different things about, well, if you don't make them quite right, you can drive over them without really impacting your car, right? So I'm just throwing that out, or other possible things to add to that particular project, because wide roads, you do drive fast. A great example is Dixie Trail. Even just adding that center lane, it's all the way up and down, all the way Dixie from Wade to Lake Boone, has slowed down traffic, because I drive on that road a lot. And it's just when you see things that are trying to force you into that particular space, you tend to slow down, even if it's paint. So I just bring that up as a possible thing to think about.
Well, just first of all, Ms. Barsness, thank you for your comment and your observation. I will just say briefly, as somebody who used to live off of Dixie Trail, I certainly do recall how quickly traffic would just
Oh my gosh,
zip on
yeah.
by.
Yeah.
I'll just make a brief comment, and I would certainly defer to staff. I know, again, this has been an ongoing conversation with our colleagues on council in terms of, staff spending more hours than I can count. In terms of, pulling together multiple proposed solutions based on public feedback and based on the corridor. My impression, and again, staff, please correct me if I'm mistaken here, but my impression from our colleagues who work in the advocacy community is that in offering the two, and again, this was a previously approved plan, the bike lanes on both the east and west side, I mean, you are going to narrow a bit that corridor, which will in turn result in that coupled with the fact that it is a school zone. So people, should be slowing down in a school zone, given the children.
You think.
You would think, but
Yeah.
But that's my impression. If colleagues on staff have any further comment about the two solutions that council will be weighing, please feel free to chip in, hear your thoughts. But otherwise, I do think our colleagues on council have been presented with a number of options with regard to public impact and public input. And the colleagues on staff, just based on their review of that corridor. So, any further comment or question from the Commission? Mr. Dunn.
I definitely hear the concern in the letter about the intersection treatments. We don't want to give up at the intersection, when we reach an intersection on the bike lane. But I don't see from the letter why that is an advantage of the painted on-street bike lane over the cycle track. I feel like you would still be encountering that same barrier at the intersection. And I'm curious, I don't know if I maybe missed something there in the letter or if there's some other level of context.
I would defer to staff or another colleague on the commission who might perhaps know more about these potential conflict points. It's a great question, Mr. Dunn.
Yeah, so I don't want to sort of speak for hokes and spokes, but I think generally speaking, the issue tends to be whenever you have like the two-way cycle track on one side of the street, the issue tends to be whenever you approach the intersection, in one of the directions, you're always going to be pointed the wrong direction. And so sort of navigating how to get back to the right side of the street is generally the concern. And whereas, like, if you have a one-way on each curb, you're flowing with traffic. So generally speaking, that's sort of the issue that we run into with these types of designs. And Donald Ross from last year, or early this year, is an example of that, where we had to stop it at an intersection. Then you kind of have this sort of awkward movement. Yeah, that's generally what the concern is.
Thanks. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
That's why we have the commission. Thank you, Mr. Caruso. Thank you, Mr. Dunn, for the question. Any further comment or question from the commission? Mr. Caruso, and then I think Mr. Rotenberry.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just make my own comment. I very much agree with the letter from Mr. Harbour. We have had quite a bit of engagement on this project for many years at this point. I agree with their points of that we should sort of prioritize doing the correct facilities in this corridor, as was sort of has been brought up a number of times both by the commission and the public. This corridor is on the bike plan to have bike lanes installed, and I think there's a very real concern that if we add in parking or sort of don't correctly implement the facility, that we are sort of kicking the can down the road and sort of setting a false expectation that parking will remain on this corridor forever. And just sort of as well as an observation, virtually every property on this corridor has a driveway. I would personally be more sympathetic if there wasn't off-street parking available, but from sort of a look at up and down the corridor, it seems like virtually every property has off-street parking available. So especially given that kind of fact, I have a hard time personally supporting adding additional on-street parking in this corridor.
Mr. Caruso, would that be a motion to endorse the letter?
Yes, thank you. I will make a motion to endorse the letter from Oaks and Spokes.
That was a question for clarification on my part. That was just a question.
Thank you.
Because I do believe Commissioner Rotenberry also has a comment. Thank you.
No, it's all good. We could have gotten to it after the motion, but it doesn't matter. I'm so tired of talking about this. And so just kind of as a protest vote, I'm going to vote no for this. I don't disagree with the letter in any part or way. I'm just sick of it. So just wanted to explain my no vote before I cast it.
Thank you, Mr. Rotenberry. Ms. Barsness.
And I actually have another question, not to debate this whole topic again, because like I said, I'm not intimately familiar with what all of the concerns are, but since there appears to be concerns about lots of different users of that space and making it safe for kids. And so my question is a little bit more general, but very specific to schools. I live right by NC State, and so I drive, we're neighbors. And I drive in school zones all the time, whether it's Fraggled or Wiley or Lacey or all of those schools, and they're in heavily trafficked areas because they're really kind of in the middle of the city. And so my question is, more generally, do you all have things, ordinances or best practices that speaks to what requirements you would have around schools in terms of, bike parking, hawk signals. I mean, all of those different types of things to make it safe when you've got all that traffic and cars coming and going with carpool.
We have a specific group, the Safe Route, the school safety group housed in Division 0, and they have a set of rules that regulate. They're actively going through and updating all the signage in school zones.
Okay.
That effort may be complete. I'm not sure, but they are actively making sure that all the signs are done, all the speed limits are reduced and appropriate based on the rules, and then they have specific rules and regulations when hawks and RRFBs and everything are appropriate. So if you want to reach out to the Vision Zero group, they can give you all of that information, because there certainly are rules and regulations that we try to implement and follow.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Thank you, Ms. Barsness. With that, unless there's further discussion to be had, I think that Mr. Caruso might have a motion to make. Officially.
Yes, I will make a motion that we endorse the letter from Oaks and Spokes in support of Brookside Drive, sort of as adopted by City Council previously.
Thank you, Mr. Caruso. We have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Rotenberry has seconded the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sorry, I should have said it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Well, it appears the ayes have it. We have one nay vote, though I would like to make a note for the public record that the nay vote is in protest of having this conversation any further. With that, we will then proceed with one last item for general board comment. I just wanted to make a special commendation and express my gratitude to Mr. Shoemaker. Some weeks ago, we had a moment of great activity with our streets downtown, and our colleagues and friends and the owners and the operators of Father and Sons, this beloved downtown vintage store. They were dealing with effectively all this construction on the streets in front of their shop, and it was all related to the nearby Raleigh Union Station bus station that's in development, which we're all very excited about. Our friends at Father and Sons on the internet, on Instagram, commented on this and pointed a finger toward our friends with city staff as to why this was happening and why they had no public notice. And, I saw this particular post since it was so public, and I reached out to our colleagues on staff, specifically Mr. Shoemaker, and within moments, he had done the research, he looked into it, and as it happens, to put it briefly, the city was not directly managing this project. I mean, you had a private contractor, developer, et cetera, managing this, and there are codes. I mean, there are guidelines as to public notice whenever, especially you have a major streetscape project underway. And effectively, I think, if I recall correctly, there were, let's say perceived violations of said code, and Mr. Shoemaker expressed appreciation for our friends with Father and Sons, because it brought to attention for our colleagues on staff that, hey, perhaps this is a good time to get into some code enforcement with our friends downtown, and frankly anywhere in this city as we continue to grow, right, and make investments in this shared space. So, all that to say, I wanted to make just a mention and a thank you to Mr. Shoemaker for being so quick to respond, and as he's trying to manage both, city transportation and a family at home. So thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. With that, we'll move on to upcoming, unless there's any further comment from the board or the commission. Hearing and seeing none, we'll proceed with upcoming events. Tonight, Whiskey Kitchen. Immediately following the ending of this meeting, we shall celebrate our colleagues, Ms. Gallenbeck, and I think this is also Mr. Tong's last evening with us here on the commission. So, and I believe Ms. Beverly Clark is celebrating her last, term of service with the Parks Board, and so lots to celebrate. I think we might even have some birthdays this month that have come and gone, and maybe upcoming. I think Ms. Bravo Taylor had a birthday this month, and I would love to celebrate that. If there are any other birthdays that I don't know about, I feel like I might have a birthday this month. Not that it's relevant, not that it's relevant, but I'm just saying a lot to celebrate tonight. Okay. Yeah, St. Patrick's Day. I hope you're wearing your green. Okay, so Whiskey Kitchen after this. Real quick, tomorrow evening, this is with regard to our comprehensive planning, our 2050 comprehensive plan. Tomorrow evening at Dick's Park, at Dick's Chapel, from 6 to 8 o'clock, our colleagues in planning will be hosting a public session on trees and our urban ecosystems for anyone who might be interested in hearing sort of a state of the city as to where we are on all of this, followed by, community engagement and, active conversation as to, how we can better plan for the next 20 years, for the protection of our trees and the investment in our urban ecosystem. And then last but not least, our mayor and council, they are now prepared, after 100 days in with their current council administration, to give a full State of the City to the public at CAM, at the Contemporary Art Museum, on Wednesday, March 26th. This will be at 6 o'clock downtown at CAM, Wednesday, March 26th. Our mayor will offer a State of the City. Our friends at Centro, okay, that's Mexican food from the heart, okay, they are catering the event. And our mayor and council have quite kindly invited your chair to host said State of the City. So this should be a good time, if you know what I'm saying.
I think you're actually the MC.
Yes, that's right, that's right. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification, Commissioner Barsness. Let's get that language correct. For the public record, I am emceeing the Master of Ceremonies. So, with that, unless there's any further, we do, Ms. Bravo Taylor.
I would like I would like to invite everybody to participate in the Friends of the Raleigh Greenway scavenger hunt that we are launching this Friday, and we'll be continuing to have new spots on the Greenway every week for the next 4 weeks. Look to social media and or your emails. We will be reaching out, giving you details. We are hiding frogs along the Greenway for you to find.
Did you say frogs?
Frogs.
Frogs, like live ones?
Frogs, Friends of Raleigh Greenway.
What?
So cute. Yeah, we're having a little scavenger hunt with some frogs along the Greenway just to sort of spark some activation this spring, get people out, get you interested, and hopefully make it sort of an easy way to check out new sections of the Greenway you may not have seen before. So, did I miss anything, Beverly? Anything else you want to add?
No, Friends of Raleigh Greenway is a new nonprofit. It was started or under the auspices of Oaks and Spokes and sort of shepherded by a whole group of people from BPAC and PRGAP, and we held an event in the fall, and now we're doing. This is based on, if you're familiar with the pine cone pathways down in Moore County, where they hide pine cones along the trail, and we'll have prizes. Bolted Bread is giving gift cards. We've got bike tools. We've got T-shirts. We've got, so when you find a frog, you'll register it, and then that puts you in line for prizes. So.
Well, just briefly, thank you, Ms. Bravo Taylor. Thank you, Ms. Clark, for sharing all of this. I do want to say, just for the good of our friends with RTN, if you couldn't hear Ms. Clark, to put it briefly, this Friends of the Raleigh Greenway group is a bit of a offshoot, if you will, of the collective efforts of our friends with Oaks and Spokes, the Parks Board, members of BPAC, and just frankly members of this community coming together to be advocates for our public greenway system, which is prized in this city. With that, I will confirm that our next BPAC meeting will take place on Monday, April 21st. Looking forward to seeing everybody there. And with that, without objection, we are adjourned.